Court is now resumed for the trial of Wallace Nightgrave. Let us review the proceedings from yesterday. It was revealed that the trace of necromancy may not have been left by the defendant. It may have been left by a witness who used necromancy to attempt to heal the victim. However, the victim was seen by witnesses well after her time of death. This could only be explained by the defendant using necromancy to animate the victim's body. This leaves the question, where did the murder take place? Does the prosecution have an answer for this? Based on the testimonies of several witnesses, it is very likely that the murder took place in the library. Interesting. What led you to this conclusion, Miss Steelman? First, I'd like to remind the court where the victim was sighted before the body was found. It began when the victim had a meeting with the headmaster near the center of the building. Our meeting was scheduled for 12 p.m. According to my schedule for that day, our meeting lasted for an hour. This brings us to the statement of the next witness, a student at the academy. This student saw the victim walking in the hallways. I saw her coming out of the headmaster's office. She was heading towards the library. Which means that our first witness saw Bellwether leave the headmaster's office. Presumably this would have happened after her meeting there. That would... There's a word missing here. That would make... no, that is correct. That would time this encounter at around 1 p.m. I didn't realize that was the verb at first. The other event is the discovery of the body, which is when Valentina Janus contacted security. I suddenly spotted the professor lying in a pool of blood in the classroom. Valentina used a communication device to call for help while I tried to save her. As we've already established, this event occurred at 3:04 p.m. But the significance of this time is in what occurred before the body was discovered. The second witness, a member of the cleaning staff, spotted the victim in the west wing hallway. Bellwether knocked over a vase, and there were shards and dirt everywhere. It was probably 20-30 minutes before the twins found the body. This means that the encounter must have happened no later than 2:30 p.m. And this implies that the victim was near the library between 1 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. According to the defendant's statements, he was in the library during this time period. Furthermore, the time of death was at 2:07 p.m. This means that Mr. Hughes saw the victim's animated body. So here we get the timeline. I'm not going to go over all the details here because this will be used a few times, I'm betting. Or we have to amend it, one of the two, and I'd just be wasting my time with fake evidence. I see. Your deduction certainly tracks, Miss Steeland. What do you have to say in your defense, Mr. Cuthbert? The prosecution's argument is definitely well thought out, Your Honor. However, it is entirely predicated on the testimonies of all the witnesses involved. Steeland's deduction has to have a hole somewhere. And since your conversation yesterday, you've had a feeling that Miriam is hiding something. If you want to get to the truth, you'll need to drag that out of her through a cross-examination. Your Honor, to test the validity of those claims, the defense would like both of these witnesses to testify. The defense calls Miriam Frege to the stand. Frege? At the mention of her name, the judge's face turns a bit pale. I had a feeling it would come to this. Do you have any objections, Miss Steeland? I do not, Your Honor. Very well. Bailiff, please escort Lady Frege to the stand. Witness, please state your name and occupation for the... You little snakes! How dare you deceive me? Oh, it looks like she found out. I had the opportunity to brief the witness beforehand. Miss McCoy, for the record, I told you to exercise discretion. I did not mean that you should impersonate a member of my family. Yeah, sorry about that. I gave you all of the tea that I imported from the Eastern Kingdoms. I demand that you return it to me. No, you gave them to me. They're legally mine now. I'm not sure what your business with the witness is, Miss McCoy, but I'd ask that you please handle your personal disputes outside of the courtroom. Anyways, Miriam, could you please testify to the court about your encounter with the victim? Very well. I was working on a research project in my dorm room when I decided to take a break. I left my room and went on a walk. That's when I saw Professor Bellwether exiting the headmaster's office. She was walking in my direction, so I greeted her and she responded in kind. After that, she headed towards the library. A short time after that, I went back to my room and continued my work. I see. So it was only a brief encounter. However brief it was, the witness's testimony verifies two things. One is that Miss Frege saw the professor exiting the headmaster's office. The other is that she witnessed the victim head toward the library. This gives us a rough timeline of where the victim was before her death. That does seem consistent. Did Bellwether really enter the library that day? You feel like you would have seen her there if she did. Mr. Cuthbert, you may begin your cross-examination. So yeah, that's a little weird because we did run into her, which could have been the goal, and we have to look and see. We'd have to go back and look that is, but they'll probably replay some of those scenes for our convenience. I was working on a research project in my dorm room when I decided to take a break. Was this research project a part of your schoolwork? It was an independent study to develop a new conjuration spell formula. The project is being sponsored by the Crown Prince himself, and notice this time it's just crown and not crowned. So, sadness and shock? I wasn't aware that he was involved in such a study. Of course you wouldn't. Did you expect to know every aspect of his life, dear Arya? Anger. So I guess she's engaged to the prince or something? You sense a bit of aggression. If you don't keep an eye on him, House Frege might just steal him from you. As if His Highness would align himself with your rapacious family. Our banking houses form the economic infrastructure of our kingdom. But perhaps he'll come to the Steelwinds if he needs to clear a den of goblins. With all due respect, may we please focus on the matter at hand? Of course, Your Honor. I left my room and went on a walk. That's when I saw Professor Bellwether exiting the headmaster's office. And you're sure that you saw her exit the headmaster's office? Yes, I remember it clearly. I was surprised that she was still meeting with the headmaster at all. She must be talking about how they were plotting to replace him. Did you interact with the professor at all, Miriam? She was walking in my direction, so I greeted her and she responded in kind. Did anything seem off about her? No, but it was a very short encounter. It's not as if we stopped to have a conversation. You said that you greeted her and she responded. What words did she use? Why is that important? There's the shock or fear. Miss Frege, it's possible that someone used illusion magic that day. Every detail about the victim's interactions could be important. Well, I bid her good morning, and she said good morning in response. After that, she headed to the library. So yeah, that is added. And you're certain that nothing seemed off about her? Yes, like I said, it was a very short encounter. Why did she say that? It only happened over a few seconds. The witness's interactions are not what's important here. What matters is that she witnessed where the victim was coming from and where she went afterward. After that, she headed towards the library. Did you see her enter the library? I didn't, but there's not much else in that direction. From the testimony of Jan Hughes, we know that she later came from the library. Even if she didn't enter the library, she was still in that area for more than an hour. A short time after that, I went back to my room and continued my work. How long did you leave your dorm room? Only for a few minutes. I try not to let my breaks go for too long. And you didn't see the professor again after your first encounter? No, I did not. Her testimony seems pretty straightforward, but she could still be lying. I'm honestly not sure. We'll just have to focus on her statements about how Bellwether acted. Okay, this is gonna... I'm splicing this in here because I was trying to click on this, trying to figure out, like, we got the timeline information, which I have over here. I couldn't figure out how you're supposed to go down from here. I was going to different pages looking for stuff, And instead of staying here for a few minutes looking like an idiot, you just scroll down with the mouse wheel. Here you go.
Objection!
Miss Frega, if I recall correctly, you have a habit of getting absorbed in your work. So much so that you'll even lose track of the time of day. Yes, but what does that have to do with my testimony? Earlier in today's proceedings, the prosecutor made the following argument. Our first witness saw Bellwether leave the meeting with the headmaster. That would time this encounter around 1 p.m. Miss Frega, if you had said good morning to the professor, you would have been mistaken, because that encounter could have only happened during the afternoon. And your point is? You said it yourself, Mr. Cuthbert. The witness simply lost track of time. What the witness said isn't what's important here. The significance is what the professor said in response. She had just come out of a meeting that was scheduled for noon. She would be well aware that it was no longer morning. So why would she respond good morning? Wouldn't she have corrected the witness? Their encounter was extremely short, and the victim's mind may have been preoccupied. She could have easily responded to the witness without thinking. I'm going to be honest, I kind of agree with her. It's not hard to believe that they were both confused about the time. It's definitely a stretch, but you still can't shake the feeling that she's hiding something. Every time you ask her about how Bellwether acted that day, the eye picks something up. There has to be something there. Miss Frega, you haven't been entirely truthful in your testimony, have you? That's absurd. What reason would I have to lie? It's such a small detail, why does he even care? Every detail about how she acted is important, Miss Frega. What aren't you telling us? Mr. Cuthbert, you have no basis to accuse the witness of perjury. Yes, you will stop this at once. Miss Frega, you're lying about how Bellwether responded to your greeting, aren't you? It doesn't make a difference. All she did was yell at me. All she did was yell. Miss Frega, is it possible that Bellwether's response was less than friendly? What do you care? What difference does it make? Why is he being so persistent? My job is to make sure every part of your testimony is truthful. Every detail matters, no matter how seemingly insignificant. Mr. Cuthbert, you will stop this or I will fine you in contempt. There's the fear trigger on him. The professor yelled at you, didn't she, Miss Frega? So what if she did? I'm sorry, but there's no going back on what you just said. So you do admit that she yelled at you? You impudent little... Yes, I admit it. The professor didn't greet me back that day. Good morning, Professor. Be quiet. She yelled at me to be quiet. But until then, we'd always been nothing but courteous with each other. I don't know what got into her that day, but something put her in a foul mood. But that's it. Everything else I said was the truth. They'll believe me, right? I did see her come out of the headmaster's office and walk towards the library. That part is true. So, she wasn't lying about that. So, is that all, Mr. Cuthbert? What do you mean, is that all? You badgered this witness, all so you could prove what exactly? The witness committed perjury. The witness changed a small detail of her testimony, a detail that is inconsequential to the case. It was clearly an act with no malicious intent. After seeing her thoughts, it's hard to disagree with that. You were so sure that the eye would lead you somewhere, but Frega was only lying to save face. The witness saw the victim leave the headmaster's office and head toward the library. Do you have any concrete evidence to refute that, Mr. Cuthbert? No, I suppose I don't. Wait, is this really okay? At this rate, this will be the only chance you have to cross-examine her. I don't think she's lying anymore. And I was really pushing my luck earlier. If I continue pressing her, the judge might actually charge me with contempt. But if Miriam is the one that's lying, then... The defense has no further questions for the witness, Miss Steelwind. The prosecutor stays silent for a while. She almost looks disappointed. Very well, Miriam, you are dismissed. Miriam still looks like she's fuming, but leaves the room without protest. The judge breathes a sigh of relief as the young noble is escorted out of the room. Now with that out of the way, what else do you have, Mr. Cuthbert? The only way to refute the prosecutor's theory is to cast doubt on one of the witnesses. If it wasn't Miriam, then... Steelwind, to test your theory, you must question every witness that saw the victim that day. So with that said, the defense would like to call Jan Hughes to the stand. I hope you understand, Mr. Cuthbert. Your entire case rests on the assumption that one of the witness accounts is incorrect. If your cross-examination of Mr. Hughes leads nowhere, then I hope you're ready to concede. You don't like the sound of it, but she's right. Unless you can find something in Jan's testimony, you won't really have anything to disprove her theory. Bailiff, please bring in Mr. Hughes. Witness, please state your name and occupation for the courtroom. Witness, name and occupation. Right. My name is Jan Hughes. I'm on the cleaning staff of the Academy. Mr. Hughes, please testify to the court about your encounter with the professor that day. Sure. I saw the professor when I was cleaning the West Wing hallways. It was about 20-30 minutes before the body was discovered. She walked by me, but she looked pretty out of it. I heard she was undead when this happened. Pretty creepy if you ask me. After that, she went into the empty classroom. Well, that was straightforward. Come on, Jan, what are we supposed to do with that? Oh, you guys are the lawyers. I'm just telling you what I saw. Mr. Cuthbert, you may begin your cross-examination. I saw the professor when I was cleaning the West Wing hallways, about 20-30 minutes before the body was discovered. How are you so sure that it was 30 minutes before? I always check the time to make sure I'm on schedule. I was supposed to finish cleaning the halls by 3 p.m. Right. The body was discovered at 3:04. What was the professor like, Mr. Hughes? She walked by me, but she was pretty out of it. Did anything else look off about her? I mean, yeah, she was an undead after all. That remains to be proven. If you say so. Anyways, what was her demeanor like? She looked like she was in a bad mood. Either that or she was tired. I guess she was just dead inside, literally. I heard she was undead when this happened. Pretty creepy if you ask me. I believe you've forgotten a few details about what the professor did. Yeah? Sorry, it's hard to remember these things sometimes. Which details should you ask him for? Did you hear her make any sounds? Oh, yeah. After she knocked over the vase, she yelled at me to be quiet. I didn't even say anything. This detail could be extremely important. Please add it to your testimony, Mr. Hughes. Whatever you say, man. So they didn't actually add it. After that, she went into the empty classroom. Did you see anyone else enter that classroom? I'm honestly not sure. I wasn't paying much attention to her. I did think it was weird that she went in there. With the funky smell, can't think of why anyone would go there willingly. Right, the headmaster's mistake put a rancid smell in that room. He's not giving us a lot to work with. He tends to leave out details unless we directly ask him about it. I just need to ask him the right questions. Maybe we can pull more information out of him. So I'm just curious if we can do something else here. Did she touch anything? Oh, yeah. She knocked over a vase and shattered it. Might have been an accident, but she's done stuff like that on purpose before. This detail could be extremely important. Please add it to your testimony, Mr. Hughes. Whatever you say, man. I believe you've forgotten a few details about what the professor did. Yeah? Sorry, it's hard to remember. Huh. Did she interact with you at all? Oh, yeah. I didn't notice her at first, and I accidentally got in her way. She shoved me to the side and kept walking forward. This detail could be extremely important. Please add it, whatever you say. So yeah, why... is it glitched?
Objection!
So I was just doing that to see if it does anything.
Objection!
So yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me because they say add something to it, and that one part they won't let you add, and I don't know. Mr. Hughes, you said that Bellwether yelled at you. What were her exact words? I think she yelled at me to be quiet. What? I thought it was weird. I didn't even say anything. But I know better than to talk back to her. That's the thing, Hughes. The prosecution's theory is as such. The professor was murdered in the library and was reanimated using animate corpse. With a quick illusion spell, no one would notice that she was undead. However, if what you saw was truly the undead Bellwether, how did she speak to you? Huh? This doesn't make any sense. Mr. Hughes, undead can follow simple orders, but they don't have the intelligence to speak. Perhaps the witness was mistaken. No, I'm sure I heard her yell at me. I remember because what she said didn't make any sense. Exactly. He didn't say anything, but she still yelled at him to be quiet. Wait a minute. I'm afraid I don't understand. We've already established that the victim was dead long before her encounter with Mr. Hughes. But if what he saw wasn't an undead, what was it? It had to be an undead. What other explanation is there? It couldn't have been a major illusion. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to shove Jan out of the way or knock over the vase. Whatever it was, someone probably used illusory disguise to make it look like Bellwether. Does that mean it was a person? No, if it was a person, how did Bellwether's body end up in the lecture hall? Bellwether wouldn't have been able to turn herself invisible if she was dead. And whatever Jan saw, it needs to be something that could have transported Bellwether's body unseen. It would have also needed to have a mass and the ability to speak. Or at the very least, it needs to be something that can recreate Bellwether's voice. What could have done that? That's it. Do you have an answer for us, Mr. Cuthbert? What did the witness actually see? Your Honor, the witness didn't actually hear the dead victim speaking. What he actually heard was her voice being recreated using magic. Are you trying to say that her voice was recreated using a spell? Not a spell, Steelwind. It was artificery. And whoever the murderer is, they had the perfect piece of artificery available to them. One programmed with Catherine Bellwether's voice. You can't possibly mean... That's right, Steelwind. What Mr. Hughes saw was an arcane construct. An arcane construct? Think of it as a magically animated suit of armor, Your Honor. But we ruled out such a possibility, hadn't we? Construct or not, no one could disguise themselves and carry the body to the classroom. A person wouldn't have been able to do it. But arcane constructs are a different thing entirely. Those suits of armor are extremely large, but more importantly, they're hollow. I see. That means that theoretically, someone could have placed the victim's body inside it. The arcane construct wouldn't just transport the body. With an illusory disguise, it would also confuse and mislead anyone who saw it.
Objection!
I commend your deduction, Mr. Cuthbert. I would have never considered that possibility. It's certainly plausible, but what does this prove exactly? It proves that the body wasn't animated using necromancy. My client isn't the murderer. The defendant is still capable of performing all of the acts that you described. His compendium contains illusory disguise, after all. There were several students in the library that day. Any of them could have committed the murder. One might come to that conclusion if they didn't have one crucial piece of evidence. I'd like to present a new piece of evidence to the court. From under her table you see Miss Steelwind pull out the bloody rapier. Blood? Is that? Yes, Your Honor. This is the murder weapon. She was saving that for the perfect moment, wasn't she? This rapier was reported stolen by Miriam Frege weeks before the murder, and during the investigation it was finally found. In the defendant's locker. Wait. He was clearly trying to use one of her possessions in a paltry attempt to frame her. Why, he even stole her locker's nameplate and placed it over his. Damn it, that's not what happened. But honestly, it sounds more plausible than what really took place. We're basically back to square one, aren't we? Anyone could have told that construct to do all those things. Wait, anyone? Is that really true? The construct transported the professor's body, and someone used an illusion to make it look like her. They even used a pre-recorded voice to make the illusion more convincing. Could anyone have done that? So, I'm assuming the log... I'm hoping that we can talk about the log here. No. Okay, so they're asking for the person. So if you remember, it can only be adjusted by the headmaster, that last line there. And here he is. Having him adjacent to the forum is a little weird to me. Several memories fled back to you. Mr. Hughes, you said that Bellwether yelled at you. What were her exact words? I think she yelled at me to be quiet. She yelled at me to be quiet. But until then, we'd always been nothing but courteous with each other. I don't know what got into her that day, but something put her in foul mood. Be quiet. Sorry. Be quiet. Iris begins giggling. She seems amused by what's happening. The construct's voice is just a series of pre-recorded messages. I'm not sure if you noticed, but it uses the voice of Professor Bellwether. Unfortunately, you can't make them say anything other than what's recorded. Only the headmaster can change those settings. No, it can't be him. What is it, Tyrion? Did you figure something out? I did. But is he seriously the one behind all of this? Miss Steelwind, earlier you said that my client could have orchestrated this entire ruse, but that's simply not true. How so? Anyone could have ordered the construct to carry out the victim's body. Yes, but not everyone can change what the constructs are able to say. Only one individual has the credentials for that. Theodore Redmond, headmaster of the Imperial Academy. Wait, you're not serious, are you? You think the headmaster did all this? I don't want to believe it. But he's the only person who could have done it. That's completely ridiculous. Headmaster Redmond would never do something like this. Miss Steelwind, there's one common element between each of the witnesses' encounters with Bellwether. It's what Bellwether said to them. She yelled at both of them to be quiet. Miriam Frege was particularly surprised. She had a good relationship with the professor. But when greeted by the professor, Bellwether just shouted at her, almost as if the professor was responding indiscriminately. And recall her encounter with Jan Hughes. The professor knocked over a vase and shouted at him to be quiet immediately after, even though he hadn't said anything. She was responding to the sound of the vase breaking. Now let me ask you this, Steelwind. Where did Bellwether come from before she encountered Miss Frege and Mr. Hughes? Her meeting with the headmaster. It appears that the defense truly means to indict Theodore Redmond. If so, we have no choice but to take a brief recess until he can be brought here. There's no need. Fortunately for you, I'm already in the gallery. The headmaster stood up from the gallery seats behind you and slowly walked onto the witness stand. Has he been here the entire time? Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cuthbert, but do you think I am the one who committed this crime? I'm sorry, Redmond, but no matter how I look at it, everything I found points to you. No, there's no need to apologize. In fact, I should commend you on the lengths that you're going to defend dear Wallace. The court appreciates your understanding, Mr. Redmond. Anger. Now then, to clear the air, I suppose I should give my testimony on what happened that day. That day I had a meeting scheduled with the professor at noon. She showed up at the expected time, and we discussed various administrative matters. Our meeting went on for an hour, after which she left to prepare for her next class. Despite our many disagreements, we still knew how to be civil with one another. After all, I had no reason to bear a personal grudge against her. I just can't see it. He seems like such a nice person. Is he really the person we're looking for? He has to be. No one else could have orchestrated this entire plot. You just need to find out how and why. That day I had a meeting scheduled with the professor at noon. What was this meeting for? Oh, nothing of note. Anger. We were merely discussing her daily operations and duties within the academy. Starting to hiccup. In an academy such as ours, it is beneficial to regularly communicate with the staff. She showed up at the expected time and we discussed various administrative matters. So, she showed up at exactly 12 p.m. More or less. Catherine Bellwether was many things, but she was never tardy. And he's still angry. There aren't any witnesses who saw her before the meeting, so you don't have a way to disprove what he's saying. It'd be best to look elsewhere in his testimony. How long did this meeting last, Headmaster? Our meeting went on for an hour, after which she left, presumably to prepare for her next class. So that means the professor left your office at 1 p.m. Yes, she was quite adamant about taking time to prepare her lesson plans. Now that you think about it, Frigga had no idea what the time was when she saw Bellwether. If the headmaster is lying about when the meeting ended, there'd be no way to verify it, which would account for the hour gap that Steelman mentioned. Damn it, did the headmaster really do this? Despite our many disagreements, we still knew how to be civil with one another. After hearing so much about her, I find that a little hard to believe. I can see why you'd say that, but despite everything, I was still her superior. She always remained professional when speaking with me. Is that really true, though? After all, I had no reason to bear a personal grudge against her. Really, even after the way she acted toward the students and faculty. Make no mistake, I've heard many complaints regarding her actions, and I've had many conversations with her to try to correct her behavior. But at the end of the day, she was a remarkable professor, regardless of her lack of people skills. His testimony pretty much matches what we know so far. I'm not entirely sure if he's lying or not, but at the very least, we know that he was involved in the professor's murder. But why? If you can figure out his motive, you might be able to find out how to reveal him to the court. So I'm trying to find the right one. Here we go.
Objection!
Redmond, did you really hold no animosity toward Professor Bellwether? Of course not. I did have strong opinions about her, methods of teaching, but I always remained professional. We both did. Frankly, I find that hard to believe. In fact, I think you might have had a very good reason to murder the professor, considering that she was going to take your job. What? So you knew about that? I'm sorry, but I don't follow. Just how was the professor going to take the headmaster's job? According to Miriam Frege, Catherine Bellwether was currying favor with the noble families. In fact, there was a plan to oust Mr. Redmond and appoint Bellwether as the new headmaster of the academy. What? But in any case, I doubt that the headmaster had any idea of this until now. I'd like to remind the court of the witness's reaction just now. He said, "So you knew about that." His reaction was one of surprise. But he wasn't surprised by this information. He was surprised that I knew this information. That's... Please, dear Arya. I may be a frail old man, but I'm perfectly capable of defending myself. If you have an explanation, Mr. Redmond, then by all means I'd love to hear it. Gladly. It is true that I knew about the Frege's plot beforehand, but I'd only just learned about it. On the day of the murder, the professor told me about her plan. She was going to replace me as headmaster and replace the staff with her arcane constructs. Now, you might say that this would have given me the perfect motive to murder the professor. However, the supposed murder weapon was stolen from Miss Frege. This happened weeks before the murder and my discovery of the professor's treachery. I had no knowledge of their plan before she told me, and therefore I wouldn't have had known to steal Miss Frege's weapon in an attempt to frame her. Are you satisfied now, Mr. Cuthbert? There is no way that the headmaster could have come up with this plan. If he really did do this, that means he stole the rapier too, right? Most likely. His alibi makes sense. He couldn't have planned this whole thing unless he knew about Bellwether's plans. That would mean he knew about this weeks ago. But how did he even find out? The best way to tell a convincing lie is to leave a lot of truths and only change one detail. Maybe Bellwether did tell him, but she actually told him weeks ago. The question is, how do you prove that? Mr. Cuthbert, you may begin your cross-examination. It is true that I knew about the Frege's plot beforehand, but I only just learned about it. So you only learned about it recently. Doesn't that seem a bit too convenient for you? It may appear that way, yes. But... on the day of the murder, the professor told me about her plan. She was going to replace me as headmaster and replace the staff with her arcane constructs. That must have infuriated you. Your colleague betrayed you and attempted to steal your job. I'm only human, of course I was taken aback. I've been headmaster of the Imperial Academy for decades. Sadness and anger. To think that the professor and the board would go around my back like that. Now you might say that this would have given me the perfect motive to murder the professor. With the professor dead, you won't have to worry about losing your job. At least, not for a while. I suppose you're correct, but there are others who benefit too. The faculty staff is now aware of the Frege's plot. With her plot delayed, they won't need to worry about probably losing their jobs either. But what happens if you prove that Redmond is the killer? He'll lose his job and House Frege will just appoint someone else. No, you can't think about that now. If you don't prove Redmond's guilt, the court will convict Wallace. However, the supposed murder weapon was stolen from Miss Frege. This happened weeks before the murder. As the headmaster, you'd probably have the tools available to get into her room. Yes, I will admit that. The Academy has a master key that can be used to enter each of the students' dorms. And yes, as headmaster, I would have access to that key. Then you had the perfect way to get into her room and steal the rapier undetected. I suppose I did. However, there's one flaw with your logic. I had no knowledge of their plan before she told me, and therefore I wouldn't have known to steal Miss Frege's weapon in an attempt to frame her. It was my understanding that the Freges wanted to keep this a secret until the very end. Why would Bellwether, of all people, tell you about her betrayal? I imagine she wanted to taunt me with that information. Anger. We've long had our disagreements looking back. She may have resented me for that. And at that point, there wasn't anything I could do to stop her. Really? I thought you and the professor were on good terms. I thought so too, but I suppose it was all a facade. She was just biding her time until she could take my position as headmaster. He had to have known about Bellwether's betrayal weeks ago. Right. The question is, how do we prove it? Do we have something that proves he knew about it before the day of the murder? Trying to find the one piece. Okay, so that's about the lockdown. Here it is.
Objection!
He says, did I have the wrong one? Ah, crud. Oh. I had only just learned about it. It's this one, I'm on the wrong window.
Objection!
Redmond, you keep saying that you didn't know about Bellwether's plot before yesterday. Do you still plan on staying behind that claim? Of course I am, because it's the truth. I'm sorry, Redmond, but you should really close your doors during your meetings. What? Did someone see? It is true that Bellwether revealed her plan to you during one of your meetings. In fact, Jan Hughes happened to overhear that same meeting. But he only overheard the part where the staff would be replaced. And that's the strangest part, Redmond. According to Mr. Hughes, this meeting occurred weeks ago. You can't accuse the headmaster of perjury based on a rumor. Everything you've just said is based on second-hand information. Mr. Hughes distinctly overheard the staff would be replaced with arcane constructs. That is too specific and too accurate to assume he misheard a different conversation. The professor probably only revealed her plan for the arcane constructs. That still doesn't prove he knew about her treachery beforehand. Professor Bellwether had no authority over the cleaning staff's employment. It wouldn't make sense for her to just reveal her plan for the arcane constructs. That would only make sense if he knew that Bellwether would be taking his job. So tell me one thing, Redmond. Why did you find the need to lie about this? Is it because you saw a need to protect yourself from my accusations? Redmond, I asked you a question. Did you murder Catherine Bellwether? What a fine mess this is. I'm not done. Not yet. Headmaster? So you truly plan on pushing this, are you? Well, your thesis sounded promising, Mr. Cuthbert, but I believe your arguments could use a little work. You think I killed Catherine Bellwether? Me. I'm an elderly man in his late 80s. I can barely walk, much less wield a rapier. So this is the part about where only the headmaster can change. Or wait, that's the lines. Read that. I was alone and had nothing to overpower her with. Trying to find the right piece, but because we're going to be using this in a second. This is the construct that actually moved her body. So, are we supposed to present this one now? So we can see that it does log everything. Okay, so that was the part we need to click on. But you and Bellwether weren't the only people in that room, were you? You needed the Arcane construct to carry Bellwether's body. That means that the construct would have already been in your office. And with your privileges, you could have easily programmed the construct to stab Bellwether for you. Even so, think about what would have transpired afterward. Recall Miss Steelman's timeline of Bellwether's witnesses. With your theory, the construct would have spent more than an hour in the library. Having it there would have risked my so-called ruse from being discovered. Luckily, Lady Frege can't tell night from day. So I guess we have to intuit this one. The timing deduced from Miss Frege's testimony is predicated on one thing. She saw Miss Bellwether exit your office after your meeting. However, if we assume that you're lying about when this meeting ended, your entire argument falls apart. Miss Frege would have encountered Bellwether after her death at 2:01 p.m. Miss Frege wouldn't have made a mistake like that. Miss Frege thought it was morning when she saw Bellwether. She can't reliably tell the time. Shock. Then, what about where the rapier was placed? If I really was the murderer, then that would mean I planted the weapon in young Wallace's locker. Several of the students had lockers there that I had access to. Wallace is one of my prized students. If I had to frame anyone, he would be the last person I chose. And here's about the switcheroo. You're right, Mr. Redmond. You wouldn't try to frame Wallace, but you would try to frame Miriam Frege. It would have been the perfect act of revenge, wouldn't it? You murder your treacherous co-worker and frame the daughter of the family that helped her. But something went wrong, didn't it, Redmond? The labels on Wallace's locker and Miriam's locker were switched. Anyone who saw that would have easily mixed them up. I am the headmaster of the Imperial Academy. I have records of all the students' lockers and where they're located. There's no reason I would make a mistake like that. If I truly planned this, I would have known where Wallace's locker was. A simple change in labels wouldn't have led me to make a careless mistake like that. So now I can carry out simple tasks. But it wasn't you, was it? Your arcane construct was the one who planted the rapier in the locker. I bet you commanded it to place this rapier in the locker of Miriam Frege, but it saw the ID number on Wallace's locker and assumed that it was Miriam's. This is... Redmond begins desperately stammering, looking for something to say. Miss Steelman, say something. What? Mr. Cuthbert, your theory may be plausible, but there's no evidence to support it. Ah, that's right, you don't have any proof, do you? There's no evidence of my orders. Saying that I could have committed the murder is the same as proving I did it. Your arcane construct is still in the locker room where it planted the rapier. All we have to do is take a look inside it, and we'll see the blood inside. Is that so, Mr. Cuthbert? What? Why does he still look so confident? No, Mr. Cuthbert, I already checked the inside of that construct during my investigation. The interior was completely clean. What? The construct's primary function is to assist and clean, dear Tyrion. They have a function that allows them to clean themselves inside and out. Well, we can still look at its command history, right? Think about it, Mr. Cuthbert. Do you honestly think that the murderer would leave behind evidence like that? I'm sure that whoever orchestrated this plot, they ordered the construct to wipe its logs when it was finished. No. That's right, Mr. Cuthbert. Your case against me is theoretical at best. But I suppose I can still give you marks for trying. Damn it. He thought of everything. Was he seriously able to get rid of all the evidence? Now, it looks like there's text that appears underneath those boxes, but I don't know what that is. You're running out of options. But you still have one tool left. It's unbecoming to glare like that, young Tyrion. He's doing it again. Bring yourself back to that moment with Garrick Pierce. Think about what's at stake for Wallace, just like you did with Celeste. His life and his future are in your hands.
Naught can remain concealed.
You activated the empowered eye again. Redmond did a good job of covering his tracks, but there has to be something that he forgot to get rid of. So, I don't remember how this works. I'm just gonna do one randomly, and I did everything I could to cast doubt on Frigga's brat. Can't believe Valerie placed a trace of necromancy on the body. To make matters worse, the construct placed the evidence in the wrong locker. So he did send the construct to the locker room to plant the evidence. He must have also fabricated the documents that accused Frigga of cheating. It was all to make her look like the murderer. But this doesn't give you anything new to work with. Well, we haven't actually used this yet. Why was the construct in the locker room, though? It shouldn't have been there if it had followed my orders. No matter, it wiped its logs. They have nothing on me. So he did order it to wipe its logs. In order to cover all of its tracks, probably would have done this last. Are we able to use this now, or...? The construct's orders were clear. Plant the body in Lecture Hall 2B, and then plant the evidence in Frigga's locker. It was supposed to head to the storage room afterward. What happened? Interesting, the construct wasn't supposed to be in the locker room. Wait, he ordered the construct to the storage room. It would have done that after it was finished planting evidence in the locker room. But we found it in the locker room. Actually, it would have been the lockdown one, did. Right, the body probably reported earlier than Redmond expected. This means he probably started the lockdown before the concert was finished in the locker room. But does this change anything? How did the lockdown affect the construct's actions? So we're looking for Bellwether. Body. Was interrupted by the lockdown. Oh, I see. Redmond's series of commands was interrupted by the lockdown. Right, the series of commands would have been interrupted. Wait a minute. Constructs execute a series of commands in the order that they are given. But let's say one of those tasks is impossible to complete. When the construct gets to that task, it will deem the entire series impossible to complete. As a result, it will stop executing the series altogether. So if a task in a series of commands is impossible, then the command will interrupt the entire series. Basically crashes. The construct's final command was to wipe its memory. But if its orders were interrupted by the lockdown, then... Miss Steelwind, I have nothing more to ask of this witness. What? You're not giving up, are you? Do you even have to ask? Yeah, I thought so. But how are you going to prove he did it if he's not testifying? Don't worry. The next witness's testimony will be all I need. Next witness? That look on your face isn't one of defeat. Just what are you planning? It's nothing but desperate bravado. Now, if you'll excuse me. You've let your quarry get away, Mr. Cuthbert. I hope you know what you're doing. I do, Miss Steelwind. First, I'd like for the Inquisition to bring in the arcane construct in the Academy's locker room. We have already established that the murderer could have wiped its history. Please, just humor me for a second, Miss Steelwind. Very well. Bailiff, please relay Mr. Cuthbert's request to Commander White. Well, here's your construct. I hope you know what you're doing, Mr. Cuthbert. Construct. What are your orders? Please recite your command history. Reporting. Command 1, stand by in Headmaster's office. Command 2, await vocal signal, attack, from Theodore Redmond. You hear Redmond stand up from the gallery. Seeing this, the prosecutor watches him and carefully clutches the handle of her cane. Command 3, treat Catherine Bellwether as a hostile entity and neutralize. Construct, wipe your... Hold, I assume that's supposed to... I don't know if that's an intentional thing, or... Before he can finish his sentence, the prosecutor points her cane at the headmaster. Magical energy shoots from it and collides directly with him. The magic wreaths around his body and stops him from moving. He's clearly trying to struggle against it, but it looks like he can't even move his mouth. Miss Steelwind? Excuse the interruption, please continue. Command 4, await vocal signal leave from Theodore Redmond. Command 5, move to classroom 2B. Reply to any inquiries with voice line number 3. Command 6, remove Catherine Bellwether from interior frame and place on floor. Thank you, Construct. You can stop now. I think we all know the rest. But just to be clear, who gave you the series of commands? Commands were provided by Headmaster Theodore Redmond. How? I ordered the construct to wipe its command history. Mr. Redmond, constructs don't follow the same logic that humans do. They're prone to error when their commands are impossible to execute. Impossible? In what way were my commands impossible? You were the one that made it impossible. You activated the lockdown system. The lockdown? The body was found earlier than you'd like. You had no choice but to immediately activate the lockdown system when it was reported. However, the construct was still in the locker room when you did this. So that's why it was there. The construct finished its tasks in the locker room, but then it tried to follow your next command. It tried to move to the storage room, but it was prevented from doing so. Completion of that command was impossible. So, the series of commands was stopped before it wiped its history. You little... Theodore Redmond, you ordered your construct to murder Catherine Bellwether. Then you had to place the murder weapon in a locker to frame Miriam Frega. And we have your construct's testimony to prove it. And that's checkmate. I can't believe it. How could you do something like this, Headmaster? She's going to take everything from me. My position, my academy, my students. Everything would be gone. It was going to be stolen by her and the Fregas. Why did you say anything to me? I could have... Don't you dare stand there and act ignorant, Lady Steelwind. Do you think the Fregas acted alone? Your father was a part of this plot, too. What? I had nothing to say to you. I thought you were different. I listened to your lies about societal reform. In the end, you were just like the rest of the aristocracy. By the scale, Lord, what have I done? I was even willing to sacrifice poor Wallace. I can't believe Why did I do this? It appears we have a full confession. The court sees no reason to prolong this any further. Bailiff, please escort the witness to a holding cell. Mr. Cuthbert, you really did it! Feels amazing, right? Like a big weight being lifted from your shoulders. It does, but I can't believe the headmaster was the one who did this. Right. Despite everything Redmond did, he was the one that allowed Wallace to pursue his dreams. I'm sorry. I'm sure this is bittersweet for you. What am I going to do now? Headmaster Redmond was the only reason I could even attend the academy. With him gone. Come on, don't think like that. You got acquitted. I'm sure it'll all work out. You want to agree, but necromancy is basically taboo. Without Redmond's support, there aren't many places he could learn it legitimately. And then there's the Imperial Academy. Hey, don't you get all sad at me too? Sorry, I was just thinking. With Redmond gone, the Fragas will probably just appoint another sycophant as the headmaster. Valentina, Valerie, and Jan, they're all going to lose their jobs. Come on, you found the truth and you put a murderer behind bars. You saved Wallace. She's right. As you start to exit the courtroom, you're greeted by Miss Timora. Was she in the gallery this entire time? At the end of the day, you saved Wallace from a wrongful conviction. You should be proud of yourself for that. I suppose you're right. Maybe I am just overthinking things. But the doubt still lingers in your mind. Now come on, I'm taking Wallace to that restaurant we went to last time. Do you remember how much that place cost? Don't worry, I have plenty of gold. Am I the only one on this team not making any gold? Why don't you meet us there, Celeste? I need to talk with Tyrion for a moment. Alright. Let's go, Wallace. Okay. You activated the Empowered Eye again, didn't you? She doesn't appear to be praising you. I did. I didn't really have a choice. The Eye of Horus is a powerful tool, Tyrion. But that's twice now that you've used the Empowered Eye to get out of a tough spot. You can't keep relying on it if you want to grow as an attorney. One day you'll find a witness that has the Empowered... You'll find a witness that the Empowered Eye won't work on. It's worked for me this far, though. But I suppose you're right. I'll try to rely on it less next time. And that marked the end of another case of my career as a defense attorney. Another life saved and another murderer brought to justice. But I still couldn't shake this feeling of uneasiness. Was it guilt for what would happen to the faculty staff? Or was it something else? So, complete Case 2 Walking Dead complete. That's the achievement popping. Now, unfortunately, I had to do this over the course of like 4 different days, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is I don't remember if all the evidence was even used. I don't remember if there was like any proof of the academic dishonesty that was used in the case, or if that was like part of a earlier argument or something. But yeah, just so you know, that's why I may have been a little off on this part, because I'm trying to think of what has and hasn't been used. Man, Steelan's been talking with the perp for hours. What's there even to ask at this point? Turns out she doesn't trust his testimony. Something about his memory is not matching up with the crime scene. You don't think he has mage blight, does he? No, it's not that. She found that damn symbol etched into his desk. Or what'd she call it? The purple mark? Oh, for the not this again. Look, if the little lady wants to chase the boogeyman, just let her. At least this time, she's doing it personally instead of dragging us into it. Cast sleep. Hey, what's up with... Who did this to your desk? What has gotten into you? I've already admitted to everything. What more could you possibly want from me? Where did this graffiti come from? What is the symbol? What is the purple mark? I don't know. A student must have done it at some point. Think very hard, Headmaster. When did you receive this purple symbol? Focus on the moment you received this. Wait a minute. I remember it now. But how? Lady Steeland. Lady Steeland. Arya, what happened? Are you okay? That was close. My elation over meeting him almost made me forget. Iris, what are you doing here? Why... Wait, I remember now. It was you. You put those ideas into my mind. You're the one who told me to murder Bellwether. Oh, you humans never fail to amuse me. I didn't make you do anything. Everything you did that day, all the planning, all the preparation, that came from your own mind. And I have to say, I was quite entertained with the scheme you came up with. Why, you even broke into Miriam's room. I didn't know you had it in you, old man. You made me forget about our conversation, but how? Illusions can't affect the mind. Magic can't affect the mind. It's a shame, though. I would much rather turn Wallace into the antagonist of this chapter. Could you imagine if he turned? It would have been spectacular. Armies of the undead running rampant in the streets. But alas, even I couldn't corrupt his pure soul. Answer me, who are you? What are you? Who am I? I'm the Lord of the Sixth Circle. So real quick, if you don't understand the significance of her name, Iris is the goddess of chaos in, I think it's Greek mythology. The part of her last name, Il, is self-explanatory, and Mater is mother. So, sick mother of chaos is one way of interpreting her name. I really didn't want to call attention to that earlier, but, I mean, you see the glitches where people remember things that clue you in that there's something to, where it's just... I don't know how fast people caught on to how deep the rabbit hole went. But anyway, guys, that was Case 2, and I am out of here. I'm the Hero of Light. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.